I'm going to take a little bit a change in some of the pace, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about solutions in swine and poultry, but starting off with a lot of the same pictures that you've seen before. And as you can see here on the left-hand side, beef cattle, of course, we spent a lot of time talking about methane. And if you look at the swine and especially poultry, I got one message for you. And it comes from a quote from the Chick-fil-A cow: "Eat more chicken." That'll solve us on the methane. But they definitely have concerns about nitrogen as excretion. So if we're looking at the percentage distribution of greenhouse gases in swine and poultry, you'll see the swine on the left-hand side, where it's the feed production side of it that contributes most to the greenhouse gas problem. Although we do also have some manure storage related to that, and there's some methane. In poultry, it's about 78% in broilers, 68% is contributed from feed production to the global warming or the production. And most of it is because we feed a high level of soybean meal, and that discredits these climate change parameters quite significantly. One thing that a lot of these models really don't account for is the cycling side, because they don't account for the crop poultry manure in that the carbon dioxide is actually a next fixation in that crop biomass. So in a sense, we're overestimating what the contribution is. And this is from research just recently published in Canada, where they looked at a poultry wheat-based cropping system. So if we were to look at greenhouse gas emissions strategies, as feed production contributes to the most greenhouse gas emissions from pig and poultry production, as we've heard many times before now already this morning, efficiency is all what really matters. So it's converting feed into edible products, and that's the key determinant. And there are strategies which I'll cover today, is about genetic selection for improved growth. The poultry industry has done very well in that, as well as the swine industry. Feed formulation strategies to minimize nutrient excess, use of feed additives and ingredient selection to improve digestibility. There's new technologies related to precision feeding and management strategies, and then some sustainable alternatives of soybean and corn, which will help with that. All right, so here we go. Little history. Poultry has grown quite a bit. I published a paper together with Jerry Havenstein many years ago. It's the most published paper in the history of poultry science, and it just keeps on getting multiple sightings. And part of that is where we looked at the impact of genetics and feed or nutrition on the performance. And if I was born in 1957, kind of giving away my age, but back then, it just to get a 42-day-old bird, it took, that bird was just a little bit more than a pound. Today, we can easily have more than 3.5 kilos in that same time period. And back in 1957, it was pretty common to have a 2-kilogram bird, but now we can do that in 27 days. So that performance has been a linear progression every year, about 50 grams weight for age per year. That's a 1% increase per year. It's linear. The geneticist at Aviagen and Cobb says, yeah, we're still doing that. And we're projecting that just in a few years, we can easily achieve this goal. So the genetic potential is there. Whether the production system can accommodate that, it's a different story. And over the years, we've also made many changes in how we formulate diets, as everyone is aware of. We first started looking at our NRC many years ago, just crude protein. And then as we looked at amino acids, then digestible amino acids, started thinking about ideal protein ratios and accretions. It's trying to hone into what is really required and formulating accordingly, because if you don't, you're going to end up with spillover. And everybody knows this. In your classes, you teach this Liebert's barrel concept. And basically, it's about amino acid balance and where you can supplement amino acids so that you've got less nutrients, greater capacity for nutrients to be retained and less spilling over. And so the whole concept of trying to develop that and getting updated nutrient requirements for all of our animal species is absolutely critical, and to refine that. And it's just not only the requirements. Many of us, if you're looking at amino acids, you're looking at lysine requirements. And here's a digestible lysine requirement for broiler chickens, for example, and then some feed phases. But if you've only got 4 feed phases, you've got several periods where you're underfeeding or overfeeding, and that's that excess that is contributing to that excess nitrogen. So one way is to try to have multiple phases. And now there are companies, especially in North Carolina, we have turkey companies that changes a formula by blending. Every single load that goes out is a new formula based on blending to achieve a better efficiency. Feeding low protein and supplemented with synthetic amino acids as the cost of amino acids are decreasing. This is becoming much more palatable from an economic perspective. Feeding pigs about 15% less crude protein with amino acid supplement. Right now, commercially, we have available lysine, methionine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. And in doing so, we can achieve a 39% decrease in greenhouse gases. And most of that is by reducing the ammonia emissions with little effect on methane. For poultry, doing the same sort of a technique, we can achieve about a 30% decrease, and that's just from recently published data as well. But there's one argument going on now because when you feed very low crude protein and you dump in a lot of amino acids, we're not getting the expected performance that we have. And some of the thoughts is that free amino acids might be transiting the gut a little bit faster, ending up in the colon, which is getting metabolized or catabolized and causing a loss. So there is some research going on in my lab and as well as other places where we're looking at trying to match the absorption kinetics of crystalline amino acids with more of the intact protein amino acids so that we can actually get a better absorption and less emissions in the end. Here's some research by Alfonso Avila. Recently looked at the amount of crude protein that was fed in several different studies. This is a meta-analysis of the work. And as you can see, as you can decrease the crude protein levels, we're seeing whether it's depending on the age of the bird, decreases in nitrogen excretion. Same sort of a pattern that you're seeing for looking at replacement of soybeans. And of course, that's another metric of trying to replace soybeans with alternative ingredients. And so by decreasing that crude protein, we have that effect ultimately in global warming. And of course, here's the global warming or the climate change impact also decreases on a linearly as we decrease crude protein. And Capillera just recently published a study looking at climate change, and this is with pigs and poultry, using the LCA analysis. And again, same concept. This in this case, this is in replacement of crude protein or reduction in crude protein. So in this case, you'd say I got 100% reduction, or sorry, not 100%, but that's 10%. Grams per kilogram, we see a significant decrease in things related to climate change, acidification, eutrophication, and land use as well. Recycling, we've heard about this whole concept of using waste, and waste is defined by a number of different ways. Even co-products that's part of the food process, it can be considered by some a waste. And here's a nice recent study by Surson that looked at greenhouse emissions compared water consumption, land use, nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon balancing, formulating strategies. And so he compared everything with a corn soy type diet, either by adding a distiller dried grains, 15%. Okay, that's a co-product of the corn industry. Adding about 8.6% of thermal processed supermarket food waste. Then looked at low protein supplemental amino acid formulation, adding a phytase. And all of these alternatives to standard corn soy diet reduced the nitrogen and phosphorus. What was unique is that the least overall greenhouse gas emission in land use and water consumption was associated by just adding 10% of these food waste products. So this kind of hits about, there's enough food waste in the United States in terms of the economic impact of all of that waste can power 42 coal plants in the United States, heat 50 homes. There's enough fertilizer that can be used to grow all of the plant-based foods that's used for human consumption in the country. And it will take a land use that's the size of California and New York combined. It's huge. So if we can harness that concept and then divert them into some feed ingredients, those are ways to do that. Then there's the other way of trying to upcycle these food wastes in low quality organic matter. And there's right now, the economics is not there, but they're quickly developing capacity. The greatest potential here is in the black soldier fly. We have a company, a startup company, that's now backed by a major renderer called EnviroFlight, and it has some pretty good results associated with that. And so what they're looking at is potential sustainable alternatives to soybeans for corn and soy. They have a favorable amino acid profile, heightened derivatives, also has a benefit in terms of microbiome and immunity. And it's also, the lauric acid also provides some medium chain fatty acids that have some antimicrobial effects. So this could help within the entire picture. The use of enzymes is also a potential in terms of not only improving feed conversion, but the digestibility. And some research by Bongard in 20 studied all these, the xylanase, amylase, and protease concept. Total savings caused by the addition has a significant decrease in the climate change impact. And a lot of it is in terms of replacing poultry fat or soybean meal, meat and bone meal, things related to corn. Yes, there's a little bit of a cost of fermenting this, but and also we can use more distiller dried grains, et cetera, as alternatives. So these things in the net case can have a significant impact. Particle size, also just manufacturing the feed differently. Fine grinding for pigs can significantly decrease a lot of the improved digestibility and therefore reduce a lot of these emissions. And in broilers, we've done a lot of studies. We're looking at particle size. If as long as 10% of the diet has more than 1,200 microns in a pelleted diet, we can have significant reductions in emissions as well. And some additives like saponins, et cetera, essential oils. Here's some research that shows that supplementation of saponin can reduce about 26% of ammonia emissions and reduce the carbon emissions. That's done mostly by binding the ammonia and inhibiting the urease activity as well. So we've talked about life cycle assessments. It's, and you'll hear more about it a little bit later. In terms of that, it's a compilation of evaluation inputs and outputs and potential environmental impact. We know a lot about it. And there's been a lot of developments that's been associated in standards by the ISO through this period of time. And I think this is a powerful tool that we can use to assess just the impact of some of these nutrition and management type strategies. So just as we've heard earlier, this is a study done by the US broiler industry. I'm not going all the way back to 1964, but just the last 10 years, basically. And in that period of time where we've also increased productivity, but feed conversion and all other factors, we can see significant improvements in the impact on climate change. Whatever metrics you look at, we're seeing that. And we can project almost, if we keep on this track of genetic selection, the next 10 years we'll probably have another significant improvement for that. All of this requires some perspective. And the only way to capture that is through modeling and life cycle sustainability assessments and looking at other components as just not environmental. There are social issues, et cetera, related to performance. So the take-home message I'd leave with you, about 60 to 80% of greenhouse emissions from swine and poultry gives us the greatest opportunity by enhancing performance objectives. We can consider how we can do some formulation constraints using LCA impacts and outcomes, optimize amino acid digestibility and balance, use some food co-products and waste products, precision nutrition techniques, and et cetera. And some of the opportunities for research, I think, and I'm just putting a plug for the committee I'm working on at NANP, that's the modeling committee, that's the greatest opportunity, I think, for us, not only to determine what is the nutrient requirements based on the growth objectives that we have, but it also allows us to kind of look at the whole picture and use all the tools. So developing models, big data analytic techniques and technologies, for instance, to reduce greenhouse gas growth modeling and nutritional requirements is really needed. We need some funding associated with that. Usable LCA models, that's very practical, and how these models can then use to determine what kind of optimization should be done. And so you can drive formulations different way, and linking these software input outputs with analytics, AI, other kinds of techniques to be able to achieve an objective that we need to have. So we can now forecast any technologies, opportunities, or maybe even identify potential gaps. Thank you very much.